Today we're building Rivendell, or the last homely house from the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit in ARK Survival Ascended, using the brand new Elven Structure Skins. It offers a pretty sizable base with room for your tames. You of course have plenty of cozy interiors. I added a lot of libraries because of the wise elves, but of course you have enough space for most of your crafting and storage needs, as well as some lovely areas for your personal bedrooms, but more importantly for all of your elven splendor. Hello there survivors, and welcome back to another build tutorial here on the channel. Today I'm going to show you exactly how to build my version of Rivendell, but there's already a few other elven build tutorials on my channel for some additional details and decorations that you can add around the base to fully immerse yourself in the elven theme. And if you want to deep dive into this base and all of the decorations, the interiors, etc., check out the full tour video that I already made, which is already up on the channel, before you decide whether you want to build this all or not. As I said, it uses the Elven Structure Skins, which is a premium cosmetic, but definitely well worth it if you're a fan of Middle-earth and you want to build in this beautiful elven style. Now, this build is fully possible on official. It is within the structure limit, and even though I have used some clipping in some places, I show you the alternatives on how to get by with official settings so that you can still build this and enjoy the beauty of Rivendell yourself. If you enjoy seeing these types of build videos and you want to continue to see more, make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and of course feel free to leave your suggestions for future builds you'd like to see down in the comments below. So this is the shape of the foundation that we will need. It's quite a complicated shape, but it is the entire shape for the building. Now, there's two ways to build this. One, you can build this entire foundation, and then I personally would raise it up by 2. You can of course choose not to do that if you want to save on structures, or you can skip out on foundations altogether and build this same shape using pillars, walls, and ceilings, so that you lose out on all of the extra foundations that you need to place down, which will make it a little bit easier to place this building wherever you want. So this is a quick overview, but now we'll slowly go around the entire foundation to show you how many there are on each side of the building. We'll start right over here, which is kind of the middle between the two sides of this build. It's a little 2x2 here in the middle. So if you start with that, you have a row of 6 foundations here and 6 foundations on the other side. Then here at the very back of the building, the long stretch here is 20 foundations going all the way through. Then if we go around the corner, we have 6 in total here at the very end. If we count the ones here on the outside, you see another 6 before we meet up with this one. There's 3 over here. Then we have 2 going in. Then we have 5 here in the middle. Then we have this little 2x2 coming out. We have another 5 before we go out by 2 again, and then we have 4 foundations here, and here at the very end we have 8 foundations going all the way across to the other side, and then it's basically following the similar shape until we meet back up with the building. So 4 in, then go in by 2, 5 across the little 2x2x2 to go around this part, 5 again, 2 in front, and then 3 until we meet up with the main building, which has 6 until it meets up with the line that we started with. So that is how you build this side of the building. Just keep in mind that in front of this part and on the side of that part, there's still going to be stairs that we're going to add. So you want to have at least like the room for like 3 to 4 foundations. It doesn't have to be foundations. You can do it with pillars, but like that kind of length needs to be free on the ends of those sides. Then over here we have of course these 6 foundations. Then if we go around the building, we see 4 over here, we see another 4 coming out over there, then we have 8 going across here at the very end, we have 9 going in here until we meet up with this place, we have 4 going out here, we have 8 going across here, Then we have 4 coming back in here on the outside. Then we have another 5 going here. And then again, we have 8 going across the front. And then we have 12 up to this one here. And of course, counting only the outsides every time. 4 foundations here until we meet back up with that line of 6 that we started with. So that is how you build the foundation, and that is the size of the building that we're going to be making. And then of course, as I said, there's going to be a staircase there, so 3 to 4 foundations out from that is what we need. Another staircase over here. There's going to be another one here, here, and the back there. So that's where you want to have some space available. Of course, if 1 or 2 of these don't have the room, that's fine. You can also decide not to add a staircase and just turn it into a balcony of some sorts. That's totally fine. That is up to you, but that is how I designed my building. And once we've done this, of course, we can start filling in the foundations, just so that we know that the entire building that we're about to make will have its full support. So we just want to go around and start filling all of this in. And once you've figured that all out and you've done all this, then we'll start with the actual building itself. And then besides the staircases, there's another small addition that we need to make right here where we have this little connecting piece. We want to add some triangles. We want to have 2 over here and 1 connecting, and then the same over on that corner. And we can do the exact same here on the outside of the build, just adding those 3 triangles on each of those 4 corners, just to kind of round it off a little bit more. Then, as I said, personally, I would raise up the building by 2 walls. That's a personal choice. You can build it straight on the foundations. And if you decided not to use foundations, but pillars, walls, and ceilings instead, then you should already have it on the height that you prefer. But yeah, as I said, I'm going to go around. I'm not going to fill in the walls here on the front where I'm going to have the stairs, because that will be slightly different. So we'll focus on those once we start adding in the stairs. But for now, we want to go around all of the sides of the building and adding in these walls to kind of raise up the building a little bit more, because then we can have those nice looking staircases, which I feel like is definitely a thing that belongs within a Rivendell build. So yeah, again, we're going to just go around, raise up these walls by 2. And we can do that pretty much everywhere except where we're going to have the stairs, as I said. So here on the front, we're going to leave that open for now. Trying to not misplace all of them all the time. But yeah, all the way here along the back of the building, we can add those 2 walls to raise up this whole build a little bit. And then over here, of course, we can follow the whole shape of the foundation. Here, importantly, we want to just follow these sides. So this middle bit is going to stay open. It's just the side walls that we're going to follow. And then we can keep going here on this side of the building, all the way through everywhere. Oops, not any extra ones that we don't need. But yeah, we just want to keep filling these in, go around the entire sides of the building. The advantage of doing this, besides that it looks a lot nicer if the building is raised up a little bit, is of course that technically we have a giant basement available that you could use for whatever you see fit. But yeah, as you can see already, just for the one side, it offers you quite a lot of extra space. And we're going to do the exact same thing here on the other side of the building. So again, we're just going to raise up these walls by 2, just to give the building a little bit more height, which will look quite nice. And we can keep that going all the way around. Again, also for this side, we're going to follow this line. So this middle block is just going to stay there as is. And we're going to just slowly circle around the entire build, except for where we'll have some entrances and staircases. So again, this end, we're not going to do anything. We're going to continue the build right over here and keep raising this up little by little. And again, this is also going to be staircase, so we don't add anything here. Raise this all the way up, and we can continue to do that just until this very corner. So again, we've raised up all the walls except for the ones where we're going to have a staircase to enter the building. And of course, that also means that we can add our ceilings everywhere. So I'm not going to show this entire step, but basically we just want to follow the whole shape of the foundations again and add in our ceilings and our triangle ceilings wherever needed, so that we can start working on top of this platform to do the actual Rivendell build. So yeah, you want to just go around and fill in this entire platform all the way around. And once we've done that, we can actually start working on our beautiful Rivendell base. So now we have the whole foundation raised up and filled in. We can start on the staircases. We'll start with the one here at this end, because this one is slightly different than the other four in the rest of the building. Since this one is only 6 wide, we want to take out our triangle foundations. We want to start right over here at this, going out by 2 on the outside, 2 on the outside, and bring them back together and fill in the rest. That also means we can add our walls too high here at the very end. And of course, it means that we can fill in the ceilings here to kind of follow that same pattern so that it all matches up. Then it's time to start bringing in our staircase. And we want to go from this first triangle here, add the staircase right there, and another one right over there, connecting a full stair to that, so that we have like a nice turning staircase around the building. Here in the front, well, you can either just get the stairs going straight into the ground and be done with it, or you can connect the staircases with a little platform here, so we can have some foundations right there, some triangle foundations on the corner, which then means we can have some staircases coming back down from here. If it lets you, you can have some slope walls to the sides. And there we go. It also means that we can add in some foundations underneath the staircase to fill in that shape, just like this. And now, of course, it's a matter of filling in these sides. So first of all, what we want to do is have 2 full walls right over there. We want to do the same thing, of course, over here. And you actually want to add one more next to that, just behind the staircase, to make sure there's no gaps. We also want to fill in those walls right on the corner. There we go. And then it's a matter of filling in the rest. So first of all, we can fill in some full walls over here on the corner. We can do the same thing over there. We can take out some quarter walls, place 2 of them right on top of this wall, just like so. And then taking out these slope walls again, we can have a slope wall here. We can have another one right there. Then we can take out a shallow one here, and then one fitting in right over there, just to fill in the gaps. Same on the other side, of course. And now that we've done this, it actually means that we can apply our railings to the stairs without having any issues, and we can make them go around the entirety of the staircase, as well as include them here along the edges here on the front. Then, of course, we want to add in a few details here. So what we want to do is take out our half pillars. We want to have one over there. We want to have one on the corner and one all the way at the top here. We can do the same over there. Again, repeat the process. One on the corner, one down here. And then finally, we can have some here. And if it lets you, you could have them at the front, but this will suffice. Then we want to bring out our full pillars, of course. And in these spots, we want to make sure that we connect the pillars all the way up to the ground, just so that it looks a little bit nicer and it doesn't look like things are floating. So we want to do the same thing here on those corners. And if you want to, you could also add them here on the front corners. But that is one of the staircases to get up to our platform. As you can see, it looks quite nice. That is the small version. Now we have the bigger version to build, which we will have for the remaining 4 entrances. So we will start right over here. We will go in by 1, bringing out these triangles until we have 3 here on the outside, 5 triangles in total. We can do the exact same thing over here on the opposite side, and then of course connect these together and fill in this entire slice just like that, so that we can get another platform going. Then here on the corner, you want to raise up the walls to high, and from there of course you can start filling in this entire platform. Now we want to first just go along the edges actually, because there's an interesting thing that we can do here for the rest of this. So ideally we would also have a staircase in the middle. Now if you have clipping enabled, so you're on an unofficial server or you are on single player and you have that enabled, we can make a really cool staircase fit in here. If you're on official, we're gonna have to do it slightly differently. You can still make a staircase if you're using the Elven cosmetic. You can make this shape, so we can have this circular opening. Then what we want to do is take out these triangle bits, and we basically just want to build them all the way going down like this. And on official, what you would do then is just fill in these sides, so it's a little bit of an odd shape to it, but you can still make a staircase because the stone Elven skins have a nice variant here that you can use to get a staircase on these triangle pieces. But if you're on unofficial and you have clipping enabled, we can make this even smoother. What you want to do here is we can actually remove these final triangles at the very end. We can snap in a full ceiling. In some cases, it might be wise to skin some of these triangles before you do this. You can remove that one as well, and you can have another full ceiling going through this. This is so that we create a straight line, as you can see. And now you should be able to snap in some walls just like this to get a normal looking staircase that will line up with these structures. So again, those both methods will cover whatever settings you're playing on. This is for if you have clipping. If you don't have clipping, you will do it the other way I showed before. And yeah, we can then also start adding in our staircases here to the side. We want to again start with these curving staircase at the very end. We want to have 2 of those, and then of course we want to connect our normal staircase to that just like this, and from that of course we can start to fill in the rest of the ship. So we want to have our full foundations here. We also want to have the full foundations here along the sides of the building just like that, and then of course the triangles in those final slots at the corners. And then here at the very end we can of course have our staircase go all the way down. If the landscapes allows it, you can of course have some slope walls along the sides of those. If not, that is all we're going to add for now. And then here on the inside of course we can start filling in this wall. We want to have one final one go in between those and fill in the back of that. We can add in these walls and obviously do the same thing all over again. Over here, fill in those walls, add in this one, and add in these 2. Then we can take out our quarter walls. We want to make sure that we add 2 of them here at the back. And of course, both sides, the same thing. We want to add them here. We want to add our shadow slope walls on top of these. And then we can do the exact same thing over at the other side, filling those in. Normal slope walls here, normal slope wall there, and again, if the landscape allows it, you can have them down this staircase too. And once we've done that, we want to take out the half stone pillars, or any kind of pillar technically, because well, with skins it doesn't really matter. You can have them in on the corners. We can have them here at the end of the staircase. We want to have it on this corner of course, and then over here we want to have it. We can have one there, and we can have 2 right on those corners. We can of course keep that going all the way round. There we go. And then as before, we want to make sure that we have these pillars going all the way down into the ground wherever we can see them, just to make sure that it looks like everything is being properly supported. So we just want to make sure that we connect them all up in the right way, all the way down these sides. And there we go. And then of course we can take out our railings. We can add one here, add them around this side, over there, alongside the staircase, of course, all the way on the front, if it allows you, along these ones here at the front, and back around this side too, just like that, to the front here. And then I would personally leave these ones open. And now that we've done this once, we actually want to do that 3 more times on all of these sides. So we're gonna try to replicate this quite quickly. Of course, we can bring out our triangles again, one from the end, and just fill it all in over here. There we go. We can also add the full foundations along the sides, which is going to support the staircase. And then of course, having the quarters there in the corner. We can keep doing that for all of these sides just to speed up the process. We can first lay down all of these foundations and shapes before we build the actual staircases everywhere. And it's of course going to be the exact same thing everywhere. You could leave out the middle staircase in some places if you wanted to, but I think it looks quite good, so I'll probably keep it all the way around. And then the final one is of course here at the back. We also want to add in the same shape. And then once we've done that on all sides, we can start building up all of these different staircases. Again, it's the same principle everywhere, of course. So we just want to start with these walls at the front here to get the right height for this all. Oh, I want to make sure that we do it the right way around. And of course, we can start shaping up the build. Again, it kind of depends on your settings, of course, which one you're actually going to end up building, if you have the clipping or not. Once again, if you do not have the clipping, this is the shape to go for. We can demonstrate it completely now. So yeah, you'll have these triangle pieces no matter what you're building. And then for the no clipping one, so the official version, this is just what you do. So you build down these walls and you keep the stair like this. So it's a little less smooth, but it should still work. And then of course all the other bits are exactly the same. So yeah, you can get these stairs in along the sides here. There we go. And then of course add in the full stairs going down from them. Fill in the rest of the walls here, just like this. There we are. And then the same over at the other side here. There we go. We want to have our quarter walls at the back here. And then the same thing on the opposite side. Slope wall here. And again, if it lets you, of course, we also want to have our stairs here, and we can have our slope walls to those sides if the landscapes allows it. We'll have the slope wall there, and then the shallow slope walls to fill in the final gaps along the sides of these staircases. Then we can take out our half pillars, add them in where we want them, just like this. And finally follow all around the shape to get them in all the right locations. Then of course taking our full pillars underneath and making sure that these are all properly connected and supported wherever we can see them. So we just want to make sure that we go all the way around and fill those in. And there we go. Then there's the final one. There we are. And then of course adding in our railings wherever we can to make sure that this staircase is looking its best. There we go, along the sides and end up at the front here. So obviously we want to keep doing this for the final two sides as well. And again, depending on what settings you have, the stair will look different. But in essence, it's just repeating the same process. So this is the one with clipping enabled. But I mean, in the end, it is all just repeating what you've already done a few times now. And yeah, we just want to make sure that we have all the staircases ready before we continue on to any other parts of the build. So yeah, we want to just make sure that we get all these staircases in, because that's going to also just make it a lot easier, especially in survival, to get up and down the platform at all sides of the building. So we just want to start filling this all in. And making sure that we don't have to worry about these parts anymore. So there we go. We have some quarter walls, of course. Same over here. And then we can start filling in the shallow slope walls. There we go. And then, of course, we'll have our actual stairs going down the front here. If it lets us, we should be able to add some slope walls to the side there. We can add them in here. And once we've done that, it's time for the half pillars to add the final details here. So we want to start going around like that, around the stairs, and finally here on those corners. And then, of course, connecting them all back to the ground wherever we can see them. Just like that. And doing that all around the staircase, of course. There we go. And then finally adding in our railings. There we go. Just like that. And then we have another staircase done. Just one left to go. And then we can actually start the proper building. So yeah, again, we're just going to repeat the same process over again that we've done a few times now. Should be quite familiar how to build these stairs. Shouldn't be too much of a challenge at this point. And we can just make sure that we have them ready everywhere. And again, you can always choose to leave out the middle stairs if you don't need it or you don't want it. You want to have a bigger platform up there. You can easily play around with these staircases. I just think they look really nice. They got the curve and everything to it. Feels quite elven in my opinion. So we just want to make sure that we have some kind of way to get up and onto the building on all different sides. So yeah, we can keep going with this just like that. And then, well, the slope wall is not going to fit here, but we can still add them around these sides here. Have a little quarter walls at the back. Same quarter walls around there. And then, of course, our shallow slope walls to fill in those final pieces here. There we go. And then we can take out our little half pillars and go around adding these details everywhere we go until this final staircase is also ready. So yeah, we want to have the pillars as supports all the way down into the ground, of course. just a few more until we've got them all ready. And then finally, of course, adding in our railings along the sides. There we go. And now we should have our staircases done all around the build. So we'll start right over on this side of the building. We want to take out our pillars, and we want to take out a 2 high pillar right there. So we're going to go in by 2 on the ceilings, and we want to have gaps of 2 every time and get some pillars going. All of these will be 2 high. As you can see, we can add another one here on this corner and another one right over there. And then on this one, we want to have a pillar that is 4 high. We want to have another one on that corner, and that will already help shape up the front of the building. Here on the side, we also want to raise up these pillars by 2. We can do the exact same thing over at the opposite end there. And then finally, we can do it over here on this corner, leave a gap of 2, add another one, and we can do the same thing on the opposite side. Then we want to take out our triangle ceilings. We actually want to add a little balcony here off to the side, just a pattern like that. We can do the exact same thing over here on that side. Repeat that once again in between here, and another time right here in the front. And then of course we want to make sure that we add our triangle roof pieces underneath as supports for this balcony, just to make it look a little bit nicer. There we go. And of course we can do the exact same thing here on the other side of the building. So we want to have that nicely supported, and then once again we can do it here on the opposite side. Then we want to take out some half pillars, which we can actually add on the corner of these little balconies. The exact same thing over there, and once again over on this side. And of course around the balconies we can already add in some railings so that they are nicely surrounded everywhere. There we go. And finally one more over here. So yeah, just some nice balconies as details. Here on the front we can actually keep these railings going all the way till the corner, and 2 more around the corner over there. We can repeat the same thing over on the opposite side, just to make sure that we get ready to have the actual entrance here. Then we can take out an actual stone gateway or any kind of gateway and add that right here in the middle. And of course we can add in our gate here too, so that we have a nice big entrance here for this hall. Then we can start with shaping up the rest of the building. We want to start by adding a wall that is 4 high right next to the gate, going over the top and filling in the other side of the build as well. We want to expand this right next to the gate, so the same height of the gate on the outside, so just by the 1, and add 2 more right there in the middle. Then we can take out those sloped walls, and we should be able to shape up the entire front of the building over here. So just a nice pointy roof to get us started. Then we want to take out our walls again. We want to have 4 of them here at the very end. We want to have 6 of them over here to fill in this part, and we can of course do the exact same thing here on the other sides of this. We do the same here again, and then we can actually take out the dark wood ornamental set, change those, so that is a window, that is another window, and these here at the sides are going to be windows as well. We're not going to skin everything right now. Most of the skinning I'll show you at the very end, but some of these like windows we're doing just so that you have some extra light in your build that you can use to see what we're up to. We want to take out our stone double doorways, and we want to have 1 over here, 2 on top of each other, and another one there, 2 on top of each other, We can do that for all of these balconies. These will form very nice entrances. So we want to have those for each of those balconies to kind of shape up the sides of the building. And of course, we can fill those in with the actual doors themselves so that they will be functional after this. And we can go all the way around our build. And here at the very end in the middle, we can also make sure to have another gateway. So just as the start, we want to make sure that it ends with another gateway there. Then we can take out our full walls again. We can raise them up to be 4 high in total and fill in the remaining pieces here of this side wall. We can do the same thing over here. Just fill in all these different pieces just like this. We'll do the same thing, of course, on the opposite side here. So we want to make sure that we fill all of these pieces in. And again, we'll continue here all the way around. There we go. Then we're actually going to use the modular pieces. Now, we're actually going to use them on these pillars because we can get some really nice looking pillars this way. So we want to have those at the very end. And we want to use them for all of these pillars. So again, we're going to apply all of them right now because the modular pieces are very interesting. As the name suggests, they form bigger pieces with the different parts that they have. So first of all, we'll do all the pillars. You can change the variant by interacting with the menu as usual. Change them to the different variants. I always use the variant cycle tool just because it helps me speed things up a little bit. It is a client-side mod, so you can't use this on official. But yeah, it's a very useful tool. Really wish Wildcard would introduce something like this in the base game because it just helps with skinning. So yeah, all the 2 high pillars are very easy. These ones, of course, we want to have the middle part there and then the top part all the way at the very top. And you can see this will form some really nice looking pillars. So definitely worth using these variants because they are very, very nice in general. Then we also want to use the modular pieces on these walls. 3 high in total for all of these pieces to get some very lovely windows in a second. For now, we're just going to apply all the variants first. Not above the door, just on those sides. And right now it looks a little bit weird, but again, if we change the variant, we will get the middle of the window and we get the top of the window. And we have these really nicely detailed shaped windows that we can use all along the side of this building, as you can see. And of course, same thing here on the opposite side. We want to make sure that we get these lovely windows in place. There's actually different color versions of these as well, so you'll definitely find one that you like. And then we have much of the walls down for this building already. What we want to do here, we want to raise up this wall in such a shape like that. We can do the exact same thing here on the opposite side, and we can continue that along the side over here as well. So we just want to make sure that we fill these in so they fit the shape of the building. And then of course we can take out our slope walls. We can add them in like this to make sure that these side additions all meet up with the actual main shape of the building as well. And then before we get started with the roof, we want to add the final pieces here on the front. We want to start right on top of this pillar. We can raise these up by 3. We can again apply the modular structures. We're going to change all of these variants because as you can see, there's different versions. And we actually want this nice dark wood version over here. So we can change all of these until we get the right look here. There we go. Just the final one. There we are. So that is what we want in front of here. And then we can, of course, shape up the rest of the building just like this and add our slope wall pieces all the way to the top. And then here underneath, we actually want to have our slope walls like this, because that, especially with the elven skins, will let us form some really nice shapes. We can do that here off to these sides too. And now that all that is in place, we should be able to start the actual roof. We'll start here at the back where it meets the main building, so we can bring this all the way up to the top, and of course bring it all the way back down. We can do that for all of this side of the building and all the way here until the top of the wall that we have, just like this. We can actually add in this side part as well, so that we can shape up these sides here. What we want to do is add those in these corners, take out our corner pieces themselves and add them in like this. So we're basically shaping up this roof in this way. And then of course we can continue this all the way to the front as well, basically to repeat that same pattern again. So we want to make sure that we add all of these roofs again. We can have them in these corners, of course, and then we can have our corner pieces to really shape up the sides of this building in such a way. And then finally here at the front, we also want to make sure that we add one extra layer of roofs, just to have a bit of an overhang here at the very front. And then we can of course continue to fill all of these sections in again. So we just want to make sure that we get this whole roof oops, I keep misplacing everything now, shaped up again. So yeah, we can have those corner pieces, of course, just like this, and keep filling in the rest of the roof as we've done before. So here we just want to continue to make sure that we fill in all of the different pieces across, and then again having this nice little shape going in like that. So that really already shapes up the roof. We want to add a few extra details though by taking out some ramps. We can add 3 of them right over there. We can add 2 of them here at this end, and then we can add 2 of them right over at that end. And we can of course do the same thing over here, just to kind of curve out the ends of the roof. I think this really adds just that extra little bit of shape to it. There we go. And then finally what we want to do is take out our beams and go along all the top layer of this roof to add that final detail in all the way to the very front of the roof itself. So there we have the first kind of side building done, and now we want to start on the main building at the very back. We'll start right from this corner, just because that makes a lot of sense. We can start adding a beam all the way around this layer for now, all the way up to here. You know what? No, we'll actually copy everything we've done on the other side. So 4 beams here, just so that we can kind of well, keep track of what we do and just mirror both sides. We want to raise up these walls by 3 high here in the middle, and we want to raise up these walls by 3 high. So we'll do the exact same thing on the opposite side as well. And then finally 3 walls here, 3 walls there, and another 3 here, which also means we can do the same thing here on the front of the building. And all of those we want to switch to these modular pieces, because those are going to be those nice big windows again, just because I mean they look really good. They add a ton of detail to your base, and of course they let in a little bit of light to the inside of your builds. Then these beams, you can use the dark wooden set on, the normal one or the ornament one, doesn't really matter. And we can go all the way across the bottom here, changing those beams in the nice wooden textures. Then we want to take out our pillars. We want to add the pillars right along the sides of those windows here. We also want to add one around these edges. And continue that right over here on this corner and over there. Just adding in a little bit more structure to this all. So we'll do the same thing over here at the very end. And raise up all of these pillars. There we go. The final ones over here. And these as well we can change to the wooden skin, just because it offers a very nice contrast with the normal wall pieces, which is definitely something we like. So we're just gonna keep that going all the way around this part. There we go. And then of course we can change these variants so that we have the actual windows that we want them to be, because that will look a lot nicer, of course, once we have all of these in. So we want to do that for all of those walls, create those lovely windows. And then finally for this part we want to raise up another wall that's 4 high actually, and we can go around the part that we just made. We can also add another wall on top of those, fill in this part, go around it like this, and go all the way around our building again to shape up this side of the building, just like that. Then above these parts we can actually add in our triangle ceilings again. We can do that on both sides. Okay, and then here on the inside we want to start right above these windows. We want to bring this out and go all the way across from one side to the other, and then here in the middle we can add 4 more, not the corners. That's where we're going to add the stairs later on. And then speaking of stairs, we're actually going to have one here as well. So this is going to be raised up, meeting up with the next layer that we can now fill in, which should meet up with those side bits. We can fill this all the way in, and we can have 2 there and 2 next to the other side. We can also make sure that this continues right above this little passageway. And then of course, since we have the stairs here, we want to make sure that we have the slope walls next to it, and we can have our actual walls here at the very end so that it is all closed off. Then here we want to make sure that we add in our staircase starting like this, so another nice curved stair. And then from there we can just bring back our stairs down to the grounds so that we have a nice way to get up and down these. And of course it also means that we can fill in the remaining piece of this wall so that we don't have to worry about that anymore. We can go all the way around this for now and just filling in all of these different pieces. And then here what I would do is have a shadow wall to fill in that little gap, just because it looks a little bit nicer that way. And of course we can have our railings right across the front here. Then here we want to mirror what we did on the other side, so we want to raise this up by 4 on the end of these triangles, so we can do that all the way around there. Of course we can do the same thing over here, raise that wall up by 4, another one there, another one here, and of course we can do that for the entirety here on the inside. So basically just mirroring what we had going on the opposite side all the way around, which also includes adding in these pillars. So that pillar here, pillar over there, and another one here at the end of this wall, just 4 high of course. And we can do that for this entire bit so that they match with the one that we've already done. And of course then we can connect this bottom layer with our beams going all the way across the bottom here, which then of course we can switch to be the right skins for the nice contrast already. We can keep this all the way going across to the other side. There we go. And we can keep this going all the way around. We can of course have our modular pieces here, 3 high. We can leave a gap. We can have a 3 high here and fill in all of those. We can have these again and go all the way around that. And then just adding in these final pillars next to these beautiful modular windows that we'll have. And we can change all of those. And then of course we want to change the variance on the windows so that they actually look the way they are supposed to look, which again will add our lovely details here to the side of the building, and we'll make sure that they look identical to each other. We actually want to make sure that all these pillars are just 3 high. Hopefully it won't destroy all of them. Really don't know why it does that, but yeah. But yeah, we want to make sure they're 3 high, of course. Basically to make sure that they match the height of the windows that we've got. Then here on top, of course, we can add in our triangle pieces. We can do the same thing here on the other end. And then we can also fill in the floor over here. So we want to make sure that we stick this out by 2 more, basically matching the shape below. We can do the same thing over here. And then finally, we can leave the last one open, of course, because this is where we would have the stair coming down 1 layer again. We can have our slope walls attached to the side, and then our full walls filling in those parts. We can then also fill in this side all the way to the top. We can have the modular pieces over here again so that we can create another window over there. We can make sure that we have a pillar there and then some beams here at the bottom so that we can make this match with the other side. Seems to have a visitor. And of course that also means that we can do the same thing here on the opposite side of the building, making sure we have the beams and a pillar that goes 3 high. Switch all those out, and of course add the modular window here again. Then we want to look at the middle here of those 4 windows, and right on top of that we want to make sure that we have some walls coming down. Actually 6 walls in total, so 2 by 3. And then we should be able to take out a gateway added right in the middle of these foundations. We should be able to add stairs at both ends. And of course, we can actually fill in this gate so that you can close it off if you want to. And then here we want to switch the top 2 layers to the ornament skin as well. Here at the front, we want to add a layer of walls. We can of course do the same thing here at the very back, and then underneath it, we want to have some slope walls to shape this up a little bit more. Then here in the middle, what we actually want to do is make sure that we have pillars going 3 high. We can do the same on the other side. We can be sure to have pillars at the bottom and at the top of this section. And then we want to take out our quarter walls all the way along the side here. Same over on the opposite side. And then finally, we can have 3 walls on top of each other in the middle before we have some slope walls all the way at the very top. We can, of course, change all of these pillars and beams again to have the matching look. And this middle one is, of course, going to be another beautiful window. And you can pick and choose which variant of the window you like the best. And of course, we can replicate this on the other side too. So again, we'll bring up these pillars 3 high, have the beams at the bottom and the top, have our quarter walls at the side here. Just making sure that we can center this beautiful modular window. And then of course, we can change all of these as well and add in the window itself. There we go. And finally, having the slope walls at the very top. which also means that we can add in our roof for this section at least. So we can have the roofs going from one side to the other. And the same thing here on the opposite side, of course. And then finally, we want to make sure that we have a beam going across the side here. And the same here at the very end of these. Then at the front here, we want to have some roof corners to make them stick out a little bit more. And the same thing here over at the opposite side. Alright, so we'll continue this middle section up here. We want to fill in these two walls just like this. So we can do the exact same thing here on the opposite side. And then we can do the same thing over again on this side of the building. Just like that. And then we of course also want to fill in the other sides here. So what we want to start off by doing is placing some quarter walls here so we can create some nice little rooms. You can use those as a bedroom or a little bit of storage, whatever. And we also want to add a few of these quarter walls here. Actually, we want to make them go up a little bit higher over there. We can do the exact same thing on the opposite side. And after we've done that, we should be able to fill in the rest of the wall up here, but also the rest of these walls to the different rooms. So we want to make sure that we fill all that in. And then of course at the slope walls at the very top to finish those. Then all we need to do is add in the actual door frame themselves. So you can have some doors to the bedrooms. You can decide whether you want to have an actual door in there or just the frame itself. And then of course we also want to have those frames stacked up to each other right over here for this part of the building. And then the next step is right over here. So we already have the staircase here. We can dress it up a little bit by adding some pillars to the very end up here. We can also make sure that we have some pillars underneath these as supports, and we also want to have one in the middle. We can make these nice modular pillars there again, just because they look so cool. And of course, as the previous time, we want to change those variants so you get those nice looking pillars. As you can see, that already looks a lot nicer. And if you want some added details, of course, we can add in those slope wall pieces. And speaking of the slope wall pieces, we also can add them right over here. We can actually have this shape come up like this all the way till it meets each other in the middle. And it also means that we can have a thin pillar right there. We can have some railings going next to it. If it allows you, you can place a full railing here. I'm not sure if that is possible on official, because technically I guess it is kind of overlapping, but otherwise you could always go for a half railing, I suppose. And you want to change all these to the ornament skin to get some really nice looking decoration here. So we want to do that all the way around, and that's how we get a bit of the support ready here. And then here on the other side, we're gonna kind of repeat that process. So again, we're gonna bring up these slope walls and bring them back down on the other side. We're gonna have our thin pillars right there on the corners, and then some railings around it as well to support it all. And then we can change those all to the ornament skins to get the right look. And with that all in place, it actually means that we can get started on a bit of the roof here. We can actually line this all the way up until we meet with this building at the side, and we can do that for this entire part of the roof, which also means, of course, we can do the same thing over here on the opposite side. Of course, fill in the roof parts. Same over here, of course, same principle. It is just getting this, well, another part of the roof already in place and shaping up even more of our Rivendell building. There we go. Then we actually want to bring out a large deco box, and we want to place it somewhat centered on these platforms. Something like that, because that's going to be some really nice additions and decorations that you probably want to include as part of the building. So we're just gonna place those down already so that we don't forget adding the skins by the end of it. So yeah, there we go. On each of these we want to add a section, and then over here we can actually already connect up these two buildings since we pretty much have them ready to be connected now. So we can just add the roof like this, and then of course the next layer here would just kind of go and continue going on like that. We can take out the roof corners again and make sure that this kind of blends together. Continue that beam, and of course also want to make sure that we add the beam on top of this roof going that way as well as that way. Over here we don't want to have a beam on top of that. You'll see it when we start changing all these skins. This doesn't look great, of course. This definitely can look a little bit nicer. So what we want to do is add our stone ramps over here. There we go. And then all the way up to here, except this one. This is where we take out a ramp corner so that we can kind of blend it in again, just to give a little bit more shape to this roof, and again make it all less flat. And you can already see that this corner is completely taking shape now. So then we'll continue here at the back. We have that gateway there on the other side. We want to link up with that. We want to have a pillar that's 3 high and another pillar right over here, and then we can actually add another gateway here, and of course we can add a gate itself, which also means that we want to add a little balcony here, just so that we have a little bit of some additional details. We want to have some roof triangles underneath, and then of course we can just have some railings around it, just as a little bit of detail for this wall, kind of breaking it all up. And then we also want to make sure that we add a pillar over there. Then on this side we want to have a gap of 4 before we have another pillar. Then we'll have a gap of 3 and then another pillar right over there. Then these final 2 walls we can actually fill up to be 3 high. These we're going to change to the modular pieces once again, so that we get some more cool windows here that will instantly fill up this wall. And of course some of these pillars, at least this one, we can change to the wood texture, as well as these ones here on the inside. Basically all of them except the ones right there on the front. We want to take out our walls now, and we are going to detail these walls actually quite a bit with the skins, but for now that means we can just kind of fill it all in all the way through, just until, you know, we have this wall covered, as well as another layer right on top of there. And this of course also means that we can continue this beam just to kind of set it all apart a bit more. So we want to make sure that we continue that all the way at the bottom across the entirety of the build. Then we'll take a look at the other side here of the building. We can also add this beam at the bottom until it meets up with this corner. We can of course change the look of that, and then we'll take out our pillar. So we'll have a pillar here, and of course a pillar to match on this side, which also means we can match this pillar right over here, as well as this pillar in here actually. So we'll want to change that to the wood texture. The same over there, same for this one, and finally for this one too. And the beams we've already done. That means we can also add in the windows on this side of the building, because we kind of just want to mirror what we've got going on the opposite side. So again, we're going to change these until they look like those beautiful windows, and then we can also fill in this wall and make this go all the way across the top. Here at the end we want to make sure to raise up this pillar to be 4 high. We can do the same here on the front, so we want to add another pillar there, and then we want to have another pillar here that's 4 high, and another one right over there. We can then also take out a dino gate. We want to make sure that we add that in the middle. And of course, that's going to get an actual gate in it. So that's one of the entrances to the building. We want to take out our quarter walls. We can have them all the way across the bottom, bring them up across the side, bring them across, and bring them back down on the other side of the gate. We can do that on both sides here of the entrance. So we just want to go all the way around it and bring it back down against the pillar. And then the middle ones here, we're going to fill in with 3 walls. We'll do the same thing on the opposite side. And we can change those to the beautiful modular pieces. We can do the same thing here for this pillar, for that pillar, and actually for all of these pillars. We want to make sure that we change them all to the modular pieces. Of course, that means we can create some nice pillars there. We can create some nice windows if I don't mess up the variants. We can create the pillars everywhere. And there we go. We'll get another really nice entrance this way. And it of course means that we want to fill in between with some full walls so that we have the whole entrance covered. Then for the rest of this wall, it's quite easy. We just want to have 4 walls here, 2 walls there in the middle, and then we can just kind of shape up the roof here with these pieces. Speaking of the roof, it of course means that we can start filling in the roof itself. We just want to bring across this layer all the way from one end all the way to the front and make it stick out over here. So we'll do that for all of these layers. Just bring them all the way across here. At the back, it's very easy. We just need to bring it all the way across. That's all we need to do for this particular layer. And of course, that also means that we can bring across the beam all the way to the front here. And it means that we can mirror this on the opposite side. So first of all, we can bring out those 2 layers. Then we can bring this all the way across the bottom until this corner. This is where we want to have some corner pieces to match. And then we can do the same thing over here. Fill in this all the way through. Fill in the top layer. And then finally add in this corner. So now those 2 pieces of the building nicely meet. Here at the edge, of course, we want to add some more details. So we'll have some ramps sticking out from it. And then the final one here is going to be a ramp corner. And then we can go all the way to the other side here. And then we can also add our ramps around the edge here to make it all less flat and curve it out a little bit towards the end, all the way here till the front. But of course, that's far from it because we have more to shape up here. First of all, we're going to have 2 more pillars here at the top here. We're going to actually change those to the wooden versions. It also means we can have a full wall off to both sides here. And we can have those full walls right above there. Then we can have some slope walls on the top of these to shape the roof. We can have 2 upside down ones right there. And then over here, over there, just to shape up this entire build. We can change them all to these ornament variants because they always look very nice. And then these bottom ones, I would change the shape of because I kind of like those curves a lot, and that will shape up the entrance to look like this. So then we're going to continue here at the back of the building. We actually want to add a full wall here, and we want to have some pillars right over there that we can also change to these. We want to have some double doors right underneath it. We can actually do the same right here. And then also add in the full wall there, add in the pillars, and change them to the wooden variant. Then, temporarily, we want to have a wall that goes across the entire bottom here until it meets up with the other side. What we want to do here is we want to snap a pillar right over here. That's going to go up 3 high. Then we'll have another pillar over there. That's 3 high. We can do one over here, one at the very end, and one in the middle here. Now we can remove these 2 walls, those 2 walls. We can raise this wall up by 2 and that one as well. And then before we add anything else, we want to change these pillars. So we want to change them to these wooden variants, all of them. And then the top ones, starting with this one, we want to make sure that they have these supports going on, just because that looks quite nice. And then here in the middle, we can make sure to add in some gateways. So that's going to be the entrances. And then actually here on the inside, we also want to have some of these gateways. 3 right next to each other, right over there. And then another 3 on the opposite side, right over here. Just to kind of create this corridor going on the side. Then we want to go 2 in front of that wall. We want to go across with a line of temporary walls, just like this. We want to snap a pillar right there, leave a gap of 2, snap another one, another one here, and then finally end with that one. We can take out the temporary wall after that, and then we can change them all to be those wooden variants all the way across from one side to the other. And then the top one, again, we can change the variants of. The ones on the corner, of course, we want to make sure that they only go inwards so that you don't have anything sticking out of the side, but that's already framing up this entrance really nicely. Then we can actually start from this corner and we can have another temporary wall here at the bottom. We want to have 6 walls over here. Then we can snap a pillar right there in the corner, leave a gap of 2 and another one to fill in those pillars, which we can remove the walls after that. We can of course change these to be these wooden pillars once again, and then we can change the variants at the top. We want to have these 2 with the supports on both sides. This one you can technically have it, because on the inside it will just be a support for the roof. But yeah, we can have all of those on a line here. And then actually what we want to do is want to have another temporary wall going across the side here, and we want to be sure to add in all of these extra supports as well. And then finally here we actually want to leave a gap of 1, because we're going to have one right there in the corner. But yeah, we can remove the walls again. We can change these pillars all the way across the side, and then of course change the variants here at the very top. And then for this one I would go with only that one. And then on the other side from this corner, we actually want to also go out by 6 temporary walls, just like this, where we want to snap our pillars with gaps of 2. There we go. And then of course we can remove the temporary walls again. We can change them to the wooden variants, and we can change the top one to look like supports. The reason why we're snapping is so that the pillars are facing the right ways and we don't have to start rotating everything. We can place down some more of these temporary pillars here at the side. We can of course bring in more of these supportive pillars as well, and remove the temporary walls once again. Change them to the nice wooden skin and get those supports in place. Then we can go forward by 2 more. We can add in another temporary wall, this time going all the way from one side to another. And we want to get in some more of these beams. Again, here on the front, we're going to mirror the other side. So we want to leave a gap of 1 at the corner. We're going to do the same thing over there. And then we can have a pillar in the middle. Then we can remove all of these temporary ones again. We can of course switch it all to the wooden textures all the way across. And we can add in 4 support struts everywhere, which again means that we can then add in all gateways in the very middle, and we can actually fill in this wall and that wall towards the side of the building. It also means that we can go forward by another 2 when we can bring across another wall all the way from one side to another. And then we can add the pillar on the corner, and then after every gap of 2 we can add in one of these pillars. There we go. We can remove all temporary wall again. They should all be facing the right way now. And then we can add in more of these supportive pillars. Here on the corner, of course, we want to make sure that we get the right variant. Same over here on this side. And then the other ones can have both of the supports available, which actually means that we need to add one more pillar over here, since we get to also, of course, have one that supports the sides there. And here on this side, we actually also want to have a temporary wall right over here so that we can have one pillar going up there. We can then switch those to the wooden skins and make sure we have the supports. And we can have another temporary wall there. We can raise up this pillar and we can raise up that pillar right there before we change the look of those. We can change that variant and we can change this variant. Then from this pillar, so this pillar in the corner, we actually want to go forward by 2. And we want to bring around a temporary wall all the way until we line up with that pillar over there, which is where we want to raise this up by 3, of course. We can do the same thing here on the other side. And then we can have a pillar there, a pillar in the middle, and another pillar right there. So we can delete all of those temporary walls, actually except ones in these side ones, because we can raise up the walls all the way over there. And then we can skip forward by 1 actually, so not 2, and we can go all the way across the front here. And then of course we can raise up the pillar. We can have a pillar there, we can have a pillar in the middle, another one there, and finally one on that side. And then we can go all the way across the edge and remove all those temporary walls. We can switch all of these pillars into the nice wooden textures. So we want to do that for all of this, all the way around. And then of course we can start adding in the supports. So we want to go all the way across like this. We can do this one on the corner, the other corner as well, and then of course have all of those supports in front of here. Then we can bring out the gateways once more. We can add a gateway in here and a gateway in there. We then also want to actually take out the actual gates. We can close those off, and the ones on that side. These ones, if you really want to close off your base, you can of course do that. I kind of kept them open because I like the elven vibes in them. But yeah, depending where you play, you might of course want to add some actual doors. And then over here, we actually want to have a few ceilings just over there, just around that corner, because then from that corner, we can actually bring down a staircase right over here. We can of course add some railings to the sides of it, just so that we have a way of going up and down to the different layers. And just to make it easier on yourself as well, we can of course add in this all the way across, so that we can reach all of the different levels already. Then we take out these quarter walls and we want to go all the way up alongside these pillars, all the way up to the top. And we're gonna do that for a lot of these segments. So again, we just want to bring up those quarter walls all over the place. This one here too. And then we want to go around the corner here. So we're actually still going to use the quarter walls. Just going to go around the corner and then have another layer right there. We can continue on this side too. So we want to make sure that we have some quarter walls going up there. We want to have some over here on this inside. Go around the corner again. Bring them up all the way. And then add some more in here. Then, of course, we can also go to this side of the building. Here as well, we want to bring up these quarter walls all the way to the top. We want to do the same thing along that side and continue this pattern all the way through. So for this entire bottom of the building, we're going to do the exact same pattern for all the walls that are left. So the final one is right over here. Oops. We want to just bring this up and then finally add those in. And then, of course, in the middle, we can add in 3 of our walls everywhere so that they're nicely centered. There we go. We can, of course, do the same thing over here. Same thing over there. And keep that going all the way around the building. There we go. And then a few more here. And there we go till the very end. Which of course means we can take out the modular pieces and we can change all of these to look like a window skin. Just that we get plenty of light in here, and it's just a very nice and detailed piece, so we like using it for sure. We can actually change all of these variants to this beautiful white wood. I think that's a really fancy option, so I quite like using that in this part of the building just to make it stand apart a little bit more. So we're just gonna change all of these variants until we get those beautiful windows. And again, we're gonna repeat that for all of these different pieces, of course. So we want to just keep changing the variants until we have all of them in place, which will really help us out keeping the natural light on the inside of our build, which I always like to do. There we go. Just a few more pieces and we have more beautiful windows all around this first layer. And once we've done all that, we can actually continue with these ceilings. First of all, let's make this in order. So we'll have these two open, and then of course we can fill in a little bit more around this all the way like that, so that we don't fall down the stairs. And afterwards we can of course start laying down all of these different ceilings. Here at the front level, we definitely want to make sure we fill in all the way between the pillars, but otherwise on the inside of the building, of course, we just want to kind of follow the edges of the walls that we know. So we can bring this all the way across. Of course, this balcony at the front, we want to bring a little bit wider, and then we can keep this all going again. Get this next layer in place so we can start working on that. So we'll bring this all the way to the front. Fill in all the gaps. There we go. And then add in this balcony from one side to another. There we go. All right, then here on the inside, we actually want to raise up these side walls so we can have this wall go all the way through to the end. And then over here we can actually add one more wall right there. We can do the same thing over there on the opposite side. Here on the inside again, we can continue having these walls going up like that. The same over here and the same for this corner. This is just so that we have some actual walls for this layer to work with on the inside, rather than having straight roofs right away. Then to kind of shape up the building, what we can do is bring out our slope walls here and go across like this to kind of shape up the building. Just make this staircase a little bit narrower, but I think it still works out and it's still worth it. You can of course make these into more proper walls if you want to divide up your space in different rooms, but otherwise these, at least these two, will definitely work very well. And if you want to, of course, you could add another one right here, but I'll leave that up to you. Then if we go all the way here to the very end, this is where, of course, we want to have a proper wall, except the middle two. We'll leave those open. And then we can, of course, just fill in the rest of this. So we want to bring up these walls just like that. This, of course, is a little bit differently because of the connection to the other part of the building. And the top part will fill in a later stage. Here in the middle, we want to have a gateway because that's going to be a nice entrance. And it will also allow you to bring in certain flyers should you need to do so. We'll have another one right there and another one right over here. And then, of course, we can do the same kind of walls right next to those. Bring up those slope walls and bring up the shape of the building pretty much. So we'll do the same thing again over here. Bring up those walls, bring in those slope walls, and slowly but surely the whole building up here is starting to take shape. Of course, we want to have a few more details, so we can actually bring across these slope walls all the way here on the front of the balcony. There we go. And then we can add in some railings, and depending on whether it lets you, you can add another full railing here. Otherwise, you can go for a half railing. But yeah, we want to at least add those in. And if you really want to, you can add some extra supports here by continuing those pillars. You could do the middle one, but that will also make it harder to fly in and out. So maybe you want to leave it at this, and then we can change all of those to these nice dark wood ornaments so that we get those nice intricate details here as a support for our roof. So we want to do that for the balcony, and we want to do that for those 3 balconies that we have on this part of the building. So we'll bring this all the way up as well. We can have that going across, and then again we'll have our railing. And then optionally, we can have some of our pillars there as well if we wanted to. And then we can bring those skins all the way across the balcony. There we go. And then finally, one more balcony over here in the front. And we'll do the exact same thing again. And then we'll have a thin pillar here, a thin pillar there. And we'll bring it all the way across from one side to another. And then we can change all of these skins to match it. There we go. So now that we have all of these balconies in place, the one big thing, of course, missing to finish this build is the actual roof itself. So we want to take out our roofs. We can make sure to have an overhang here at the front. We can bring this all the way up to this corner. We can bring this all the way up and across the front here to start filling in the entirety of this roof. So you just want to start filling in this entire shape. And then, of course, here we'll have the different layers meet up with each other. Shouldn't be too difficult to get that to match up. And then, of course, in these corners, we want to make sure that we connect them with our corner pieces. There we go. And then here on the other side, we can, of course, also fill in these roofs Make sure to have the overhang on the end. We can fill all of those in. And again, we can make sure that these roofs meet up with each other. And we have all corner pieces to melt them together just like so. And then, of course, we'll continue building the roof. So over here again, we can be sure to add in that overhang on the outside. And we can just start filling in all of these layers all the way up to here. This is, of course, where we're going to have another corner. So we want to build that in. We can continue adding in these roofs for all of these layers. Just like this until they meet up with each other. And then we can bring this all the way across again. Fill in the rest of the roof over here. Fill in the roof corners. Just like that, all the way to the top. Not over there though. And then of course we can just continue that here on the other side again. We have another little corner. Another overhang here at the front. We want to bring this all the way up close to each other. And just keep filling in those missing pieces until the roof meets each other with those roof corners. And we can fill in the last remaining pieces here. Then finally we can add in a beam at the very top, which can go all the way from one side to another as a nice little detail piece with the trims. And we can do the same thing over here. And of course over there as well. And now that we have all of the roofs in, we should be able to add our slope walls above the gateways. So that we can of course make sure that there's no holes in our build. So we want to do that everywhere. And if you want to of course be able to close off these layers, you definitely want to also make sure to add in the actual gates themselves. But that's not the entire roof done yet. We want to again curve it out a little bit towards the ends. So we want to take out the ramps here. We want to make sure that we add a few over here. This one we can go all the way to the corner there. And then over here, of course, we can also add our ramps. And finally, we can add a ramp corner there. And if you want to make this window a little bit smoother, you can have another corner piece there, just so that you don't block the window too much over there. Then on this side, of course, we're going to do a similar thing. We're going to add our ramps in to get that sticking out and curved out over the end. We can go around the corner and add in the ramp corners there to smooth it all out. Continue that same thing over here. Add in the ramps just like that. Add in the corner. There we go. And then finally on this side, of course, we also want to make sure that we add in the ramps all along the side here. And again, we can add in a corner here so we don't block up that window too much. And then we can have some more ramps and a ramp corner to make sure that we have that whole roof looking nice and having a nice overhang on all of the different parts. And then we can go here to the back, because we of course want to make sure that we add in all the railings along the sides here. And we can do the same thing all along the edge of the build here. So we want to make sure that they meet up everywhere, because you don't want to be falling down. And personally, I would do these ones here on the top edge here, all in the white ornament wood. Or the normal white wood, because you get the same variant, but they look quite nice. And yeah, we can bring that all the way back into the building so that the walkway is complete and you can go easily all around this part of the building. Now, I already said we could add a thin pillar here in the middle, but that messes up with the gates. What you can still do to add a little bit of extra details is have the thin pillars off to the side a little bit more, because then it still looks a little bit more built up and supported, but it doesn't interfere with your flight pattern too much if you want to fly in and out of this top part of the building. So yeah, you could totally add just a little extra support and detail here by adding those pieces into those balconies that we have, and that makes them look even nicer in my opinion. Then we still need to fix something here on the inside. So if we enter through here, we can see there's still a bit of the wall missing. Of course, here above, we also want to make sure that we fill in those walls, and then also these slope walls, just to make sure that we fill in that gap. And we can actually skin this entire top part with those ornament skins, so you can still see through them, but at least it is all connected. And if you want to, you can even add these slope walls going all the way across from one side to another, and then also change these to those ornament skins, just to make it all feel a little bit better supported. It kind of adds some nice details also here on the inside of your build, so you might want to do that. And then of course you also want to add them right over here. Just looks a lot nicer in my opinion. So yeah, we can do that all the way around, just like that, to add some extra supports. And then there is a final detail that we can add. It's a little tower that sticks out here. Either you can use one of the variants of the roofs and just add a tower that way, or we can build it ourselves. It isn't a functional tower, like you can't really go inside of it, but it just looks nice like a little detail or addition here on the side. So if you want to add that, you want to have 3 walls going up here. You want to have some slope walls right next to that, of course. And then we have 2 walls there, 2 walls here, and 2 walls there. Then we can take out all pillars. We can make sure to add those on the corners of this, just like that. We can actually change them to those wood variants, because then they have a nice contrast with the build and they match the rest of the pillars that we've used so far. Then on top of this layer, we want to make sure that we have 4 ceilings, and then underneath of those ceilings, what we want to do is we want to have some of these corner pieces. You can't do that on official, of course, because it's going to clip. So what you could do instead, if you want to still have some supports, is you could do it like this with quarter roof pieces. You just miss out on the corners because we don't have quarter corners, but it will still look pretty nice. So depending on your settings, those are your 2 options. Of course, this is slightly smoother, but yeah, that is not possible on official settings, unfortunately. And then once we have this, what we actually want to do is we want to make sure that we have 2 pillars there in the middle. We want to add our slope walls here along all the edges here. And then what we want to do is make sure that we have our triangle pieces go all the way around this part. And again, with some of the variants of the skins, we can get some really nice roofs over here. Okay, so we have this pillar so that we can still find it. We can actually remove the top pillar, because what we should be able to do now is, and you might have to temporarily remove one of the roof pieces, is snap a ceiling to the top of that pillar there. Then we can place our roof piece back again. And then we should be able to bring up 2 walls on each of the sides of the ceiling here. We can even add in some more pillars on the corners to make it look a little bit nicer. And then finally we can add some more ceilings on top of there, and we can make the final rooftop here with more of these corner pieces and go all the way round like that, which I will admit, it looks a little bit silly now, but once we change all of the skins and the variants, you get some very nice results indeed. And we just want to skin all those pillars, and that is the little addition. It is not a functional tower, it's just meant as a little bit of decorations and detail for your build. But with that, we have finished the entire main structure of the last homely house, Rivendell of Lord Elrond, and I think it is a very cool base to use. It is within the official limit, and yeah, I think you could definitely have a lot of stuff going on in here. But of course, we have skinned parts of it, the more important and more difficult parts with the modular skins. But if you want to have the whole base looking nice, pay attention to this next bit. So this is the finished product, and I'll try to go around the base in in parts, so that it's hopefully easier to follow on how to skin it and which skins to use. There is a bunch of different skins in the Elven pack. You have white wood and white ornamental wood. You've got the same for the dark wood, the two variants. We have used the dark ornament wood already on some pieces, of course. Then you have the stone skin, which is one we'll use a lot, including for some of these stairs and the roofs. But you also have the trim skin, which is the one that we use on some of these bottom walls, and you can also use that on the floors and stairs if you like. And then of course we have all of the different wall pieces. Some of those are the trim skins like those, some of them are just the wooden skins, and there is a bunch of different variations, and then of course a bunch of deco skins that you can use to liven up the place even more. So starting with the bottom layer, those bottom two walls we have skinned with the trim skin set. So it's the tiles and trim wall set is how you get this. This is one of the variants in that, and that adds a nice bottom layer to all of it. The foundations we've skinned with the stone set everywhere, as well as, you know, having all of these foundations, stairs and ceiling with the stone set. For these stairs you'll need to change the variants until you get the stairs on those triangle pieces, but they are there. Just keep changing the variants. And then we also have these stone sets on the railings to get these really nice little stone walls basically. And then here on the top we have the white wood for the railings, as you can see. So that's basically how you do the entirety of the bottom layer. Then we'll start here on the right building first, because it's a very simple building to skin. So we of course already have all beautiful windows here. Then next to it you want to use the trim skin and change, I think this is the default variant of the trim skin on the quarter walls, and that's what you do for the entirety of the bottom, except of course for the entrances. For the entrance you want to use the trim skin here at the bottom and use this variant. You want to use the trim skin here and change until you get this window, and then you just want to use the stone set at the very top of the wall. You want to use the stone set on the gates, and that's how you skin this entire front. The side entrance of course is exactly the same, and then the back entrance here of course once again exactly the same with those skins. If we then move up a layer, you can of course skin the entire entrance again with the stone skins. You can do it above the entrance as well. I think you can do all of the slope walls, and then this is trim skins again. That's a trim skin, and that's how you build the balcony part basically. That's of course the same for all of the sides here of these different builds. And then the supports that we have on the inside, I have changed them slightly to not make full walls, but just give them some supports. But this is using those white ornament skins to get a little bit of contrast. You can also use of course the dark wood if you prefer that. And then this is the stone skin on a thin pillar to get those. So that's how I've skinned this side of the building. Then the floors up here are all the dark wood skin, as you can see, and the floors down below, it's all the stone skin. And on the inside of this building I've used the trim skin, so they have like the nice tiles, which is a little bit differently from the normal stone. So that is how you skin the whole right side of the building. For the roofs, it's all these stone set that you can see. You want to change the variants if you want to get these beautiful edges at the very end. You have those lovely corner pieces also for the ramps, and you can be sure to add the trims all around the edges. You can also use the stone skin on the pillars and change it to get this trim on the top and this nice end piece at the ends of the roof. That's what we want to do everywhere. Then for this little tower addition, if you build that, you want to start with a trim skin, then another trim skin, and then a stone skin. You can use the dark wood skin on those triangle pieces or those roof pieces that you have. The white ornament skins over here and change them to get the steep version. And then we can have the stone roofs and also go to the curved versions, and until you have the steeper one. You can see those are taller than normal ARK roofs, which gives you a really nice effect. Then we can have more trim skins up here to get that window again. We can have the nice skin on there. I think that's just the wood, or maybe it's a trim. No, it's just a dark wood. And then we have the stone roofs at the top with the trims on the corners to get that little tower going. So that's basically how you build the entirety of the right building here. Then if we look at this little corridor, you can see that we have the double door. It's also the stone set to get this going. We have the stone set, of course, here on these gateways. And yeah, you can kind of decorate as you please, of course, on the inside. For these missing walls, we have a trim skin on the bottom and just a stone set right above that. And we also have this trim all the way along the top over here. Then you can change it here to this darker one, which is part of the dark wood set. To match that, we can have the curved pieces underneath that to create a little bit of an arch over there. And then above the gateway itself, it can all be stone. You can have another trim here, and then the ornament I think we already did before. So that's how you change the look of all that. So now we definitely have covered this entire building. If you're wondering about these right next to it, this is actually part of the deco. So exterior decors, that's what you want to use on the large deco boxes that we have. One of the variants is this one, and you can scale it up until you think it looks nice. This is supposed to be that variant. Yeah, you can see we use the trim set again next to the windows, and then we change the variant to that darker wood type. We want to have the ornament set up here, but change it to the steeper curves. And then these roofs also go to those steeper curves again for this middle part. And that's how we build that part of the building. Then we want to have the trim set all along the top here again. We have the trim set along the bottom and the normal stone right there in the middle. Let me actually go into that part of the building so it will be a little bit easier. Or actually, you can first take a look at the back here. You basically mirror it on the other side, except for windows, if it's not facing the outside, of course. So yeah, we have the trim set at the bottom and at the top. The top goes all the way from start to finish. And then we have the normal stone walls here. This is all the trim set, but then changing the right variants to get that effect. We have the stone gate in the middle, and then we have another one of those window sections. And then this window section, of course, we already built at the start. We can use the trim set around the windows, and we can change the bottom ones to look like the dark wood, so you have a little bit of contrast going on with these lovely windows on both sides of the entrances. You can use the trim skin here, trim skin all the way along all of these walls, as well as those walls at the top, so that you can finish this entire section with those nice detail. And then the dark wood on those sloped walls over there, and that is how you get this entrance made. If we then take a look on the inside, you can see basically this inside wall is the same. There's a trim skin on the bottom, and then there's just a stone wall here, because it doesn't make any sense to create those windows since it's facing the rest of the building. So it's very simple. There's the tiles set here at the bottom on the inside of the building. Of course, you can play around with whatever ceiling you like best, and that's basically how you decorate this entire bottom part of the building. We have the dark wood here on the stairs and the railings, and then we actually added some half pillars here. We have some nice variants, of course, for those to get some nice end pieces. We have more of the dark wood skins, then the trim skins for these walls. We have the stone skin on the slope walls, and then just the dark wood everywhere along the floors. We have, of course, the stone set here to create those doors. The trim sets right next to it on all of those walls, including the walls here on the inside of the bedrooms. This is all the trim sets to get all of these walls in place. So that's how you build those walls up. And then of course the entrances, we have the trim set for those quarter walls, the stone set for these doors, and then the white ornament wood for the interior walls, so that they're still kind of see-through but still give you a little bit of privacy in those bedrooms. And then the same for this entrance. We have the trim set along the doors, we have the stone on the doors as well as above the door, and then we have those trims all along the sides again, of course, for those walls, because this is the side walls, of course, of this bedroom here. And then for this interior wall right above this entrance is actually very easy. We have the trim, of course, going all the way through, but we have a little bit more space here, so we just want to fill this up and do the ornament skins so it looks quite nice. And then we can actually, if you want to have some additional details, have these ornaments everywhere along the inside of this building. Then we'll start from this corner. I think we already did all these ornaments in the tutorial. So then what you need to do for this wall is trim skins for these four. And then of course change to the right variants. And then dark wood above it. So that's quite simple. We have these stone skins for these doors to get those nice tall doors. As well as the one above the door. And then a trim set all the way across the top. This is the same as that angle. That's very simple. We have some nice railings, of course, for the balconies. We have the trim set here and on the inside. Same thing goes on over here, actually. Very similar to exactly the same as the other parts. And then here you can see we have these lovely supports. We have the dark wood set, of course, in those corners. We have the trim sets everywhere around this gate entrance, actually all the way across the top. And then the stone set for that top section there. We have, of course, these big windows. We can then use the dark wood set on all of these sloped walls. And then the trim sets to fill in those full walls that are still in there. And then, of course, the other side of the building is exactly the same. The tower, if you want to build that and add that, you can actually attach it by removing the walls there on the inside and then building this. There's a separate tutorial for this tower. If you add that, you're probably going to reach the build structure limit if you're unofficial, so you might want to build it somewhere slightly further away. And yeah, that is kind of how you skin the entirety of the build. Yeah, you have, of course, the tour video to look around if you want to see this whole build in more detail. But you can, of course, also play around with the elven skins and, yeah, skin to your heart's content. See what you like most and make it your own lovely elven home.